schools have always been about teaching, right? What we can teach a student or a young person in terms of some finite set of information that's somehow going to relate to their ability to succeed. And I think what we're really seeing and what we're seeing a shift of and watching it empower kids is when we focus on their ability to learn as opposed to our ability to teach, which means using all of the things that those kids have access to now, the emerging technologies, the information pieces, and really getting out of their way.
So, welcome to TomoClub Leaders for Tomorrow podcast. I'm Avinash Bansal, co-founder of TomoClub. And today on our TomoClub series, we have the superintendent of Whitehall School District, Mike. Welcome to the show, Mike. How are you doing?
Doing well today. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
No, absolutely. I think, first of all, Happy New Year. This is our first podcast after New Year. And we were very specific that we'll not call anyone for the first week and let them be. So, super excited to have the start of the year with you as one of our guests. And I've been following your work. I went through your profile, read about you. I think the topic of discussion about how do we rethink K-12 in 2026 is very apt. And it does cover a lot of aspects, but we'll try to keep it concise for our audience. And but before we get started, I would love if you can, give a brief introduction about yourself and your journey for our audience.
Well, sure. Well, this is the 29th year for me as a school superintendent, all in small rural schools here in Wisconsin. Was an elementary trained teacher prior to that. Have had the luxury of raising three great kids who work hard and do the things that they need to do, and a wife who lets me do this type of stuff, and who's also an educator and in a pivotal part of our work. So I think that's the background, but the last 22 plus years have been here in Whitehall, and that's been an interesting scenario to, first of all, to be able to stay in a place that long, and second of all, what that allows. So I think we're going to cover a little bit of that. So.
No, absolutely. That's a rare story nowadays because the churn at the superintendent level is so high nowadays that I think I don't have statistics for it, but I think average age in a school district is not more than 5 as per me nowadays.
Yes.
The 22 is definitely something which is commendable. So were you born in Wisconsin, like in this area?
Yep, born and raised in Wisconsin, about an hour from where we currently live and work. I think had the privilege of having parents who taught me to work very hard and do the right things for the right reasons and try to avoid some of those traps that it's easy to fall into, and still have that opportunity to engage with my dad today and those things. My mom's been gone for a few years, but still remember all of the things that they taught me.
No, so sorry for hearing that, but that's great that they had such an impressionable journey on you. So coming to this topic of how do we rethink K-12, my personal belief that it's a very, after COVID, time and again, there's so many new things coming on the school leadership point of view, from now AI becoming a big part of it. But I think COVID made classrooms in the drawing rooms, in the living areas of parents, so they could see and they could start to participate much more. And the expectations of parents and other stakeholders have changed over the last few years. So I would love to know, what do you think from your context, whether it's parent expectations, curriculum, instructional, assignments, grading, assessments, career readiness? I think everything is kind of now evolving. So what's your first take on rethinking K-12?
I think the first word that comes to mind is convergence, right? We have a tremendous number of things that converged all at once. As you said, a little bit before COVID, but even and now since the pandemic and since the return to school, you couple that with the technological innovations that are taking place, as well as the global geopolitical dynamics that continue to evolve. And you look at all of those things, and for a long time, school leaders weren't really both supposed to or privy to that type of information. When we were leaders, but we were much more managers. And I think all of those things converged kind of here in the last 2 or 3 years. And it requires us to really take a look at exactly what we're doing, in understanding too the reality that we were built, our public education system in this country was built for a dramatically different environment. We were meant to create compliance-based, more minimalistic thinking folks, and then allow maybe some of our folks to rise above that and become the leaders and those types of things. But the world requires a much more entrepreneurial scenario, and obviously we have some problems that require some real trouble awareness, first of all, and then the ability to leverage all of the tools and all of the information that kids have access to nowadays to solve them. So I think it's a convergence piece. Um, you merge all of those things together, and it paints a picture that requires us to really rethink what our education system looks like.
No, I love that word convergence, because I think there is definitely a lot of information boom, and at the same time, it gets very tricky to how to manage that kind of expectations as well. So tell me, like, what's your demographic look like? What are the parent expectations? And
Yeah, our area here in West Central Wisconsin is a very traditional area. So we still continue to have some longstanding families that have lived here their entire lives, and multi-generational families, with an influx of new folks in a shifting dynamic that way. But what has remained consistent is our folks' willingness to both trust their administrators and their boards, along with support their kids. And I think that piece is, I tried to do some research before this event today. I think our school district has had 4 superintendents in the last 70 plus years. That's really an anomaly, but it gives some credence into what type of a place can be created when you have a whole lot of folks that think about something other than themselves.
No, absolutely. This is definitely a rare case. And as you mentioned about the geopolitical situation, which is rapidly evolving, and again, the role of a school is also evolving accordingly. So how do you see that? Like, where a lot of people are coming up and saying that curriculum, availability of curriculum, or even instructional to a certain point is getting commoditized. Even assignments is getting commoditized. So how are schools going to be relevant for the parents or for the students?
Well, I think a lot of the work that we're doing right now, and a lot of the thought process for us is schools have always been about teaching, right? What we can teach a student or a young person in terms of some finite set of information that's somehow going to relate to their ability to succeed. And I think what we're really seeing, and what we're seeing a shift of, and watching it empower kids, is when we focus on their ability to learn as opposed to our ability to teach, which means using all of the things that those kids have access to now, the emerging technologies, the information pieces, and really getting out of their way. I think that concept of this is about adults and what I can teach, therefore I'm responsible for the learning of our kids, we're shifting that now into what students need to be, or children need to be responsible for their own learning, because it is their success that will require the ability to be flexible, the ability to be entrepreneurial, and be able to learn and relearn on a continual basis. That's been, I think, the biggest shift that we really need to understand, is this isn't about us as the adults anymore. We've been the limits for a long time, based on our own comfort level, based on our own knowledge. And I think that as we really start to, again, you merge that into everything else we've talked about so far, it really requires a relook.
No, absolutely. I think that's definitely a good outlook, where you kind of share responsibility with the students also trying to be owners of their own journey. So I was reading about your school, and I saw that how you guys have invested in emerging technologies like AI, robotics, drones, advanced manufacturing. Tell me more about it, and how did you decide that those kind of things belong to K-12?
Yeah, I think it goes back to everything we've talked about, is if we truly look at what the world is going to require going forward, and start understanding that we have to look forward. We have to stop evaluating ourselves based on past success. That world no longer exists. The Industry 2.0 world is gone, right? It's not coming back. So from that perspective, we need to really understand that. I think we've had the privilege of a partnership with the folks from Ashley Furniture. I think that's a pretty widely known brand, right, throughout the world. And their corporate headquarters still is in Wisconsin here, and it's about 15 minutes from us. I think we've had some opportunities to engage with those folks and folks that they are engaged with to really start to identify what the world's going to require. And it's going to be an emerging tech-based skill set. The Industry 4.0 piece was where we started. That was the smart automation or the smart manufacturing concept. But we identified pretty quickly that that was one piece. And as again, things have continued to evolve, even in the last 18 months, is we're understanding now a little bit better what that fundamental core set of skills has to look like. Kids need to understand electronics. They need to understand sensor technology. They need to understand that they're no longer limited by the things that we've always seen. They're not, our transportation modes are going to change. Our energy consumption, therefore, our need to create energy is going to have to change dramatically. So then what do we need to do? What does that core set of skills look like? We're looking at, we're teaching kids about drones. We're building in sensor technology. We're building in 3D design and then 3D printing, all of those different things. But it's really meant to be a comprehensive skill set, not targeting any one industry, not targeting any one specific skill set, much more a broad range.
I always think that school as an institution will always be relevant and will always be relevant, because whatever the advancement of AI happens, parents still need to send their kids to a daycare, and I am sorry for being so trivializing it, but I'm a very strong believer that the institution of school definition may change, but its existence won't. And coming to the point of, in a school, when things are in a motion, there was one school leader I was talking to, and he said a beautiful line that we do not have access to our employees during school hours or during the work hours. So it's a beast which is in motion, and you have to bring in changes while it's in the process. Right. And it becomes very difficult to bring in new programs because the time is limited. So you have to cut down something, you have to break up something, you have to embed the concept into existing subjects, and you have to train the teachers. So I would love to know, whenever we talk about transitioning of K-12, the biggest question becomes, how do you manage it because you don't have the leverage to take a pause. Okay, let's wait out for a week and then think about it.
Yeah, and I think that you're right. I think that the difficulty piece is that we don't have time. We don't have dedicated time. Like you said, you can't pause everything and move on. What it really requires, though, I think, is an awareness factor that I'm afraid too many don't have, right? It's easy to fall back into a little bit of victimology, a little bit of how difficult these things are and all the reasons we can't do things. We're very fortunate here that we have a group of folks that, first of all, the staff stays like the rest of us. We kind of stay. We have a consistency. But I think also we have an awareness factor that says we absolutely have to do this. Part of that awareness was understanding how hard our teachers have been working, how hard our educators have been working with, quite frankly, diminishing results, especially if we look going forward and stop looking backwards at what our experience was like. When I went to school in the 70s and 80s, it was a world that no longer exists.
Yeah.
That in the challenges that our kids face, back in the spring of 23, I'll never forget it. We were at the end of our year, our last day of in-service, and I looked at our staff. You could see all their faces and looked at our folks, and they were exhausted. And appropriately, because they had really worked exceptionally hard trying to meet the individual needs of our kids, which, of course, that individual need piece is growing as well. You're familiar with some of the same data I am, right? Most of us grew up in 1 to 2 learning levels in a classroom. Now that number is 9, right? The differentiation that's required in that event, or that environment, I should say. But when we looked at that, and I remember that feeling of looking at those folks and say, we need to change this. We need to really do something radical. So we kind of laid out at that time, AI was starting to really come into its own understanding. And I say that because we all know it's been around since the 50s, right? It's not new.
Mm.
Um, but the capacity that was being built and the ability to understand the technology, and we really looked at it and said, this is crazy. We can't keep this up. And our kids require and deserve something better. And if we were going to do that, kind of asked the staff, if we have an opportunity to fix this, do you want to fix it? And of course, they all said yes because they care about kids.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we said then we are going to be unapologetic about it, which means we're going to pick out a pace, we're going to pick out a time frame, and we're going to get it done as fast as we possibly can. Not recklessly, not irresponsibly, but we really were direct and said then we are not going to apologize for making progress. And that led us to where we're starting into now with a complete redesign of what a public education system looks like. And I think to their certainly folks are frustrated a little bit at times, and they're scared and they're apprehensive because it's different. There's no model, right? There's no model for this that's been built. We can't research like we always have. But I think that willingness to say, we're going to take some risks here. We're going to do some things. We're going to challenge the concepts of what our original targets have always been, what our definition of success is, what are skill sets that those kids need. And if you start from that fundamental base, the work isn't that hard. It can seem daunting, but it's not that hard because this is about kids.
Well put. And I'm glad the staff stays. So that's my next question. How and why does your staff stays? Because everyone is struggling insanely on that.
Well, I think it's easy to say for us that again it's part of our greater community, right? We work hard on our culture. Our school has embraced the fact that we are the center of a small rural community. I think, and our folks, our parents, our folks who don't have kids in school anymore, our folks that move into our community have all embraced that concept that we really do what we need to do. At the same time, we've been able to collaborate, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's been hard for me personally at times to be able to put my own thought process away, to hear some things I don't necessarily want to hear about the realities that we face and how we've gotten to where we've gotten. But I think the quicker that you can put all of those things away and understand that if we're going to really focus on kids and we're going to work on our collective future, then that builds a culture. And the unapologetic piece is we still care about everybody, even if they don't agree. But our work, our need to make progress for our kids has to take precedence over those individual needs, which means folks have choices. If they need to go somewhere else, they can go somewhere else. It doesn't mean we don't care about them. Doesn't mean we don't like them.
Yeah.
But this is the work that needs to be done. And to their credit, our staff has really embraced that. I don't believe we've lost anyone over that. I think it challenges them, but this is about kids. It's not about us as the adults.
Okay, that's fantastic. Although I think I know some of the external factors that I think a lot of cities are becoming unaffordable. So even if one person was making like a humble salary of a teacher, they could support it, but not anymore. So I think that's also one of the strong reasons that people have to switch their careers, though how much they would love teaching. So I think keeping the city affordability factor also influence a lot of teacher attrition. And plus,
you're right. Big picture thinking, right? We have to stop thinking in isolation. I've heard that from industry partners forever. We have to stop this silo-based thinking. We do the same thing in education, right? We have to understand that this isn't about what Whitehall can do for its kids. We need to understand that all of our kids, whether they are educated in Whitehall or whether they are in California or in Texas or in Alaska or in North Dakota, we need to do a better job for all of our kids. And I think that's a unique perspective. It's easy to fall back in what's the best interest of me personally as an adult. How quickly can I retire? How quickly can I get to my summer off? And I think to their credit, our folks have really embraced all of those things and understanding that this is bigger than any of us.
That's beautiful. Also, when we think about, a rethinking of K-12. I think, okay, this is coming from a personal experience that a lot of industries, when they try to keep up with the change of, things happening around, they have this buy versus build mentality. So, for example, if I start building everything in house, there's no chance I can, keep up, because a lot of things, if they're not my area of expertise, and I still think, okay, I'm going to build it in a house. And that's one of the problem with K-12, that a lot of people think I can do it. Why do I need experts? Why do I need, a third party to do this? So what's your take on that buy versus build mentality?
Well, I think like most things right now, that has to be blended. I think there are some components of this that have to be built, but we too often, in my opinion, focus on the wrong pieces that we should be building. Okay, there are opportunities now with technology, with companies who are advancing very quickly in our ability to meet some of the basic needs of our kids. And if we can deploy then our human capacity around different things, let's build the human capacity within our kids and leverage all of the other things, buy in essence the things that we used to build and build the things that we used to buy. We used to buy emotional support, or we used to buy personal supports for our kids, and we would build the curriculums, right? We would build the lessons. We would build the core instruction. I think where we're heading more is which pieces of that should we be finding platforms, finding companies, finding resources that will do those things to let us really engage our humans with our kids and build that human capacity, which I do think is going to become even more more valuable than it has been in the past. And we hear it all the time, right? We don't want our kids in front of devices all day, except as soon as kids leave school, what do? They're on devices all day long, right? So I think if we can and we can build a capacity where some of that core instruction comes on platforms, comes from something we can purchase, then we can leverage our other resources, including our staff, to better interact and do real world problem solving activities with kids, really engage them in a depth of learning that we've never been able to do because we were too busy trying to build those things.
Yeah.
Where we need to build the human capacity, I think is probably the best way that I can explain where my head goes anyway.
No, I totally agree with that. And I think literally sky's the limit with so many new things you can do, which were not possible earlier or would need hundreds of working hours to make it happen, can happen in so quick a time. So unless you start embracing it, it won't move the needle. Um, Also, tell us about the emerging technology lab that you guys created. Tell us about it. What other school leaders can learn from it?
Well, I think again, if we really learn, if nothing, we learn nothing else. It's whatever we envision possible can be possible if you can communicate and collaborate, and if you're willing to take some perspectives, and if you're really fighting for the future, folks will support it. Our emerging tech lab is a second generation of a partnership with Ashley Furniture, where we started with a mobile skills lab. We started with a portable classroom that would travel between our 4 schools that are most close to us, that really geared around Industry 4.0. That was the start. The emerging tech lab was the next variation. First of all, we outgrew the mobile lab. That was a 900 square foot space that again was pretty limited in terms of not conceptually and not initially limited, because we had a full component of Industry 4.0 pieces in there. But that migration to a much broader emerging tech-based skill set that kids would require, we had an opportunity then to secure a building that was right next to our property. And now we have 16,000 plus square feet of space that our district purchased, our district renovated, and then the folks at Ashley, the Ron and Joyce Wanek Foundation, came in and they helped us equip it. So I think that partnership piece, in a district our size, 800 kids, right, in a small rural setting, to have something like that it was a little over $2 million investment by our district. $1 million plus now of equipment has gone into there. And it serves right now kids from four different school districts, which in and of itself flies in the face of what we should be doing. Our system right now is set up for us to compete for kids.
Right.
So our version of that, we should be using that to take kids from our neighbors, which would help our budget, help our bottom line, right? Probably help our taxpayers in some capacity. But we, to the credit of our board, have opted to provide that to other districts because it is better for us all. It is better for our global society. It's better for our regional stability and growth to be able to provide access to that. And we share some teacher costs related to that, but I think the Emerging Tech Lab itself is a major movement to understand that emerging tech has to be built into the core experience of all of our kids, not just the kids who are deemed to be techie, or not just the kids who want to understand computer science. Yes, we have the capacity for those kids that are passionate to go as far as they want to go. But we really have to build a capacity for every one of our kids to have some general basic awareness. So that's kind of the lab. The real interesting approach to that is our staff, to their credit, jumped in and tried to personalize all of the experiences. A small rural school, we are limited often by the schedule that we can provide. You have one period of the day, and we're only going to offer the class one period, and if you can't get it, tough. To their credit, our staff jumped in and said, no, we're going to offer basically every one of our classes every hour. We'll personalize it for the kids. We'll get out of their way. We'll take the risk of not being the expert and really allowing our kids to become passionate about the technology that they're learning. And we saw that culture shift almost immediately. We had kids that became experts and then were collaborative. They wanted to share. They were teaching other kids. Kids felt empowered to be willing to learn because it wasn't so much the comparison of who knows and who doesn't and who's getting an A and who's not. It was really about, I know this, you want to know it? Here, I'll help you. So that collaboration, that culture, that engagement piece shifted almost overnight. And, and that has led into then doing that throughout our entire school system, and we're seeing the same impacts. We're seeing an engagement increase. We're seeing some of those behaviors that challenge all schools go away. We're seeing kids get along better. We're seeing performance increase because it's no longer you're smarter than I am, so I should feel like I'm not as good. No, my issues are different. My areas of expertise are different. And I think when we empower all of that, that really has come from the Emerging Tech Lab, as funny as that sounds, because it was about the instructional approach.
No, that's pretty inspiring, and I'm glad you could, pull out something like that. Also, because you have been in the same district for such a long time, that also lets you take those kind of punts. Because when I'm talking to school leaders, if they've just started working in a district, they won't make massive changes in the first few years because they want to make sure that they take up everyone together and they don't look as if somebody want to disrupt everything immediately. So I think more time you spend gives you a higher say to take risk like that.
Well, I think that you're exactly right, and it's unfortunate right now that if right around us, some superintendents who are new in their superintendent careers, right? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and they have a hard time taking that risk. They really do, because if they're wrong, they get shredded.
Yeah.
It's almost a trap game, as folks are waiting for folks to mess up so that they can pounce. In the meantime, the world is progressing so quickly that every day we wait, every day a district is apprehensive or a leader is apprehensive to make a huge leap forward, our kids get further and further behind. And I think that challenge is something that we have to become aware of. And yeah, folks that have been at this for a while, like me, we can do some things, we can say some things. But I think as a society, we have to start understanding that we should expect that from our new administrators. from
Hmm.
our folks that are coming in. And we should give them the grace to be able to learn those things. And we should give them the ability to make some mistakes. If progress is what we're after, it should be messy. We should make mistakes or we're not pushing hard enough, right? Every industry setting alone that's become highly successful has made some massive mistakes at times.
Right.
And we in this education business, we wait and we want to pounce on folks that, and therefore that creates that apprehension. So I think certainly that has, my own style has changed even in the last 10 years. I'm more empowered than I was before.
Hmm.
But I also think that has led to the success. So if folks that are not in this for the years that I have been can learn anything from it, it's that people will embrace bold leadership, especially now, because they have to. And if we operate from a leadership perspective of, in essence, willing to be fired, I learned that a long time ago. One of my first years, some of the older folks at that time, more experienced folks, sat me down and said, "You need to be willing to get fired if you're going to do this job. If you're going to do it well, you need to be able to take risks and be willing to put yourself out there."
Hmm.
And I think I finally now understand what they were talking about. Is we have to be willing to put ourselves out there, and if we can back and help some of our newer folks by doing some of the things we're doing, then more power to it.
Though, in my opinion, I think you guys have a bigger responsibility who have been at the same district for a longer time than expecting a new one to come and be disruptive immediately. Because
Yes.
at the end of the day, it's still a people's business. So
Yes.
even though, like in other industries, maybe your outcomes are outcomes supersedes even your behavior. So even if you are a rude person, though you are being just straight, but still it won't affect if you're giving outcomes. If you're giving your shareholders returns, it won't matter. Plus, school, any change that you do, it takes time to show results because you implement things once a year. Of course, you can make changes in between, but it takes time to show the impact at a scale. So that's one of the reason I believe people who are in the same district for a while have a much higher responsibility to be risk takers. Um, and I think people are taking that challenge up.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it becomes an obligation, right? A responsibility piece of this to lead. And I think that's one of the things that we have really shifted here is understanding that we spend an awful lot of time, and we have in the past, dealing with our juniors and seniors in high school because they're going to be hitting real world faster,
Mhm.
right? We've really shifted our thinking. We're focused a lot on our 4 and 5 year olds right now
Okay.
because we're a K-12 school setup.
Mm.
Excuse me, a four K-12 school system. 3/4 of our kids are going to graduate after 2030. You've
Mm.
seen the same forecasts I have of what the world looks like in 2030. So I think we have to embrace that, and that is a whole lot easier perspective to start to understand of why we need to take some risks and do some things differently because we're putting kids out that are going to graduate almost 2040.
Mm.
So, you start looking at that world, and if you change your lens from a leadership perspective from the next 2 years to the
Mm.
next 12 years, I
Yeah.
think it does require, and you're right, those of us that have been in this have an absolute responsibility to share, to take some risks, to put together some packages that folks can then copy and model. And that's where we are right now, honestly. We're building the model. We will have it in place for next fall of a comprehensively reformed school system at every level for K-12. There's nothing we aren't looking at. We're looking at our outcomes. We're looking at our targets. We're looking at our overall structure. What does our year look like? What does our day look like? What does the educational learning experience look like for our kids? And we're going to have that system in place for the fall. And then we're going to share it. We're not going to monetize it. We're not going to hide it. We're not going to compete with it. We're going to help everyone else to compete better as a big group and compete globally. I think that's the charge that we should be embracing, as opposed to how do I make our district the most successful one? Because if everybody else is not performing that well, we all fail. We all do. As a society, we fail.
And in fact, doing this podcast is a part of it. where you're putting it out so that, I think
Right.
it's gonna inspire people. Um, Now the last part of the segment is I want to understand what you think is a must to do, but you're not able to do. So if there's some kind of areas where you're not being able to put your money in or your time in, but you think it's super relevant right now, would love to know that.
I think the biggest challenge that we face right now is getting folks who have very, very limited access to the information of what the future looks like, getting them to embrace the fact that things have to change. We still, as parents, we want to compare our kids to the neighbor kid, right? We want to know who's performing better, who's getting better grades. We get to thump our chests and say, my kid's smart, or I should be working harder because my kid is struggling. I think that's the piece of this whole scenario that's going to be the most difficult to navigate, is getting a broader understanding of what the future is going to look like, be able to share that widely. I think that's what's helped with our industry partners, is the ability to become aware. Myself personally, I would never have been able to travel to China and Germany and 80 plus school visits inside our country without the support in the opportunities provided by the folks at Ashley and the Wanig family. I would never have been able to do that. And with that comes the responsibility then to share it. I think the piece of this that we need to understand is every aspect of school needs to change.
Yeah.
So all of us collectively, our industry partners, our communities, we need to embrace the fact that we have to look at everything, and we don't have 4 years. We don't have 5 years. We need to do this now. And I think that may not be the monetary piece of this. Certainly, there's going to be some monetary pieces. Districts can't afford the technology. We would not have the Emerging Tech Lab without the $1 million gift from the Wanig Foundation. We would not have it. Okay. Does everybody need an Emerging Tech Lab? No. So part of what our work is identifying what are those core essential components that every school should have, regardless of size. What does that cost? So we're in that process right now. We have our emerging tech competencies built. That will come with it a set of equipment that should be able to be mirrored in schools. I think then maybe resources can be secured with partnerships, with opportunities to do that. But I think the big piece still comes back in is supporting those that are willing to take risks.
Right.
That's the capital going forward. That's the new venture capital in my world, is that support and encouragement of leaders to take risks. So, and that kind of has to come from the communities, and quite frankly, it has to come from those outside education.
Oh, absolutely. Now, if you're putting your prediction hat on and you want to predict something that's gonna emerge or that's gonna make people rethink K-12 again, any segment of it, which you think is the segment which is right now not being a focused, but very soon is gonna become the focus?
I think the biggest piece that's still going to come is how quickly our kids are going to have to relearn. I think the workforce changes, that overall geopolitical environment of a true global community, a true global economy, is going to require us to be able to learn faster than we've ever learned and handle things from a shift capacity, from a movement capacity, a redesign capacity that we've never been able to see. We have no background in that at all. You know, our world has been pretty stable, especially here in the US. Our world has been very, very stable for a long time. We haven't had to deal with some of the things that other parts of the world have. I think that's going to be the part that's going to be most difficult, is understanding how quickly we're going to have to navigate change. And then what are those personal and academic skill sets that are going to provide kids the ability to do that? We hear a lot about durable skills, the grit piece, right? All of those things. That's part of our work right now, is blending durable skills into emerging tech skills, blended with academic competence, redefining what that competence looks like, and then creating your stretch, right? Looking at our minimum, what does our basic competence look like? And then what are our stretch goals? How do we create pathways for kids to then embrace their passions at the same time, ensuring and coaching those passions to meet what the world requires. I think that's going to be that's the redesigned concept that is going to be hard to do, is understanding this isn't about a set of courses that look cool on a transcript and somehow give some false idea of an employer to an employer that we are capable of all these things. So it's going to require a massive shift across the board. That's going to be the difficult piece.
Love that. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and so many insights. I think this is going to definitely be helpful for any school leader. We have one fun segment before we end this podcast, which is called Insight by TomoClub. So there is a question asked to you by a previous leader, and then I'll ask you to also recommend a question for the next leader of the podcast. So there's a chain of questioning that we do. So this question is from, hold on, let me check. Okay. His name is Michael Berry. He is a director of curriculum at a school district in Vermont. And the question that he asked is, how do you structure your day, keeping both personal life and professional life managed?
I think my answer will probably be conflicting with many, is I don't necessarily believe in the whole balance concept. I think if your passion is your work and your work is your passion, I think it would have been easy a long time ago to get out of this business if it was about my personal growth or my personal wealth, those types of things. I think when you become passionate about something, regardless of what it is, if it's manufacturing, if it's leadership, if it's education, and I think that balance piece is, if you're embracing that as a life, that's your balance. I think that whole piece is a little bit more difficult, and it's quite frankly a sales pitch, I think, in many cases. We're an education family. That's basically kind of where we are. But at the same time, we're passionate about making progress. Therefore, the balance comes naturally. Certainly, there has to be some downtime. But I think it's finding something you're exceptionally passionate about, so your work is your play and your play is your work, I think has some cool opportunities. And then stretching yourself over and over again professionally leads to better personal satisfaction. If I was sitting around doing the same thing I've done for the last 29 years, it would be exceptionally depressing, it would be exceptionally boring, and it'd be exceptionally irresponsible. That would be my best answer. Probably not the typical answer.
No, but I agree with you. I think that's exactly a case with me as well. When I work in education, it really comes out of excitement. So I think I literally don't have a structure to my day, because I follow my thoughts and my gut and, keep on going about it. Is there anything specific about your day structure? The question was around that as well.
No, the day structure itself, my day is what it is, right? It may be derailed quickly. It might take me down a path of a research piece. All of a sudden, I catch something. I have information sent to me. It's an article from a publication that I don't see that could take me down a path. My work days are generally 10 to 12 hours. I think a little bit of digging at home once in a while. But I think an open door scenario is significant. Our folks free flow in and out of my office all day long. Now that's a small thing. But my door's been longer during this experience, been closed longer today than it will be at the rest of the day. So I think that awareness, that accessibility is essential. But in terms of maybe the answer is I don't have a structured day, and maybe that is the success factor, is I don't go into it with a preset of I need to accomplish this today. I think we need to meet the need, meet the world where it comes, meet the people where they are, use our capacity as leaders to help them navigate their day. And then whatever prep has to happen outside of that.
Absolutely. And now, any question that you have that you want to pass on to the next school leader?
I think the question that I ask a lot in all of the presentations that we do and all the sharing is, what are you going to do in the next 30 days that really impacts our kids going forward? What bold steps are you going to take in the next 30 days to empower our kids for their future?
Got it. I'll come back to you with that answer very soon. And perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Mike. It has been fantastic. And thank you for giving us time. Take care.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.